welcome back my subscribers to another Sunday speed paint. We are doing another redraw, so a re-redrawing. I had made the original illustration back in 2017 when I first started using my digital art tablet, which was a Wacom tablet that you could plug in. I think it was the Intuos. Then, about 2 years later in 2019, when I had my iPad Pro, I had designed this, and I made a speed paint, and I talked a little bit about the characters and the origins of this. Let's see what I do this year, because I was disappointed and disheartened with how I had made the illustration last year, and I feel I could absolutely do better. And of course, next year when I look back at this, I'm probably going to do the same thing, but for right now, I'm actually really happy because I drastically changed this illustration's pose, because when I made the 2019 redraw of the 2017 drawing, basing it just off of the original stance where they were standing, and it was a surprise attack where the anthropomorphic character was standing there unaware, and the attacker had a sword. It was a human assassin. In this world, I had this universe created a long time ago, where humans and anthropomorphic characters lived in a society where they don't get along very well, and each of the areas that they are in kind of have restrictions and rules that kind of prohibit certain activities. So there's certain wild areas that can exist where humans and anthropomorphic animals would engage each other in combat if they so chose to. These two characters I had were sort of like secondary main characters. I honestly think that I scrapped the story idea in favor of my the Dawn of Gales, or I will just add these characters into the Dawn of Gales as background characters to Vixie as my main character. However, I did want to keep these characters kind of like personalities that I had developed. The things that I did wind up changing about them was the clothing choices that they had. One thing that I wanted the anthropomorphic characters to have consistent, if I were to add this into the Dawn of Gales universes, is the anthropomorphic characters can wear clothes and they choose to, but they don't always wear clothing in such mass amounts as humans do because they already have protection with fur, scales, or other animal parts that they have. This being a kind of like common thing that I wanted, so I instilled the scarf, belt, and pants for the anthropomorphic character, and I ditched the rest with the jacket and the belts and everything because I thought it was way too much. I changed up the hair color and I resized their body to match the current style that I have, where they have massive paws, tails, hips, and ears, to kind of like add this to the lore of the world for the anthropomorphic character's body structures. For the human, I gave them another hair change. I went from short hair to long hair back to a medium length hair because I felt that it suited the character a lot better for the personality. And one of the things that I also changed a little bit of design, though you can't see it because of the positioning of the sword, is actually I changed the sword's design. I went for an extremely simple sword in the first 2017 illustration, then I changed it to a fantasy blade that looks like it would probably break if you were to make that as a real weapon because of all of the indentations on the backside that would hurt, yes, but would also probably snap because of how thin and frail it is. But with the newer sword design, I just had it as a simple curved sword so that if someone were to attack from the front, they could use it, or if they needed to block from the back, they'd have just a little bit of a curve so that if someone tried to attack them, they could catch the blade in there without cracking their sword. And another thing that I had was I changed the hilt. Instead of it being what looks like a red gem, I decided to just change it to a crescent moon to kind of add some lore to it of perhaps that's where they're from. And I can't draw shoes to save my life, so I think I made sandals instead of boots this time around. You can decide what they're wearing if you want to, but I kind of went with a sandal look instead of the boots because I honestly had no idea what I was going to give them, and I changed up where I gave them like a little cape instead of a jacket that looks like it's from 2020. I don't want it to have too much of a modern aspect to it if they were to be in the Dawn of Gales, because the most they would have is a steampunky-like system where they use magical electricity to, power things instead of actual electricity, so they probably wouldn't have stitched jackets like they would in modern day. Another thing that I added to the character was a little bit of backstory. Perhaps they have the scar on their cheek and their bandaged up hand as a battle encounter from past anthropomorphic characters, and that's why they might hold a grudge on this character. And one of the things that I also added later on, but you don't see it in the speed paint because I had a lot of technical issues here, I recorded this speed paint over the course of like 3 days because I wanted to work on the project a lot longer than I would a normal speed paint, which usually takes me a day and a couple of hours, but I really wanted to work hard on this illustration from start to finish and make sure that I had a decent looking background, even though that's my weakest link right now. I wanted to make sure that the clothes and the highlights and the shadows stood out in their own ways, so I wanted to kind of piece that all together for this and try to one-up myself, I guess you could say, from the previous illustration that I did, and not be so hard on myself if something didn't look right. So one of the things that I'm trying not to be so hard on myself with is the way that I have been shading and highlighting, so I tried something just slightly different, and instead of going in with a multiply layer and adding it slowly, I went in and colored the whole thing with a multiply clipping layer so that everything of the characters was colored. Then I went back in and erased everything where I would imagine that the lights would hit them in the surrounding terrain. Since it is a cloudy kind of thing, I thought, why not have the light coming from above them, sort of from like an above sunrise type of thing, so the main shadows you can see underneath their feet is where the main sort of like casting shadows are coming from, but they would still have other parts to them where they had like clothing that might overlap as extra dark shadows, so I added in an extra shadowed multiply layer to change this effect, which differed from my 2019 illustration where I just went in with one single solid shadow and one single solid highlight, so there wasn't too much change from 2017 to 2019 besides slight anatomy adjustments. But I feel that this illustration drastically changed because of the poses, and I wanted to keep that a consistency as I get better, is that I want to heavily change the way that I make my characters from stiff, basically looking like paper cutouts, to actually posable people that look like you could actually, you know, reach out and touch them, and they don't have disproportional legs, or they don't look like they're like standing sideways when they should be facing forward. That was one of the discrepancies I had with my last redraw of this illustration. Was I think I adjusted it so that the angle of it looked like if you were to take a piece of paper and tilt it from a different angle. That's not what I wanted to do. I wanted the perspective to shift of a foreshortening like it is here, so I literally tilted the landscape to change that perspective view so that it looks like you're looking directly at the anthropomorphic character in the foreground and the human in the background. If you guys enjoyed this speed paint, please consider supporting the channel in any way that you can, whether it's Patreon, Ko-Fi, commissions, or just liking and joining the Subscribbler Squad by subscribing today. Thank you so much to all of my current subscribblers. You guys are pawsome, and all the support is greatly appreciated. What do you guys think? Did you guys like the improvements that I had made, or what do you think I could still improve on for next year's? Because I do plan on doing more of these redraw illustrations. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye!